It may be late July, but there's some big signings around the National Hockey League this week. We're going to talk about that. We've got our bi-weekly Women's Hockey Spotlight, an interview with Allie Munroe, and the Oilers hire Stan Bowman. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I'm Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders. I'm here every Friday with Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers. And Rachel, how are we doing here as July winds down?
I know, it does not feel like July winding down in terms of activity in the NHL. It was a very weird late week of a flurry of hirings and signings and such.
Yeah, not what you expect at this point in the summer, but we'll take it. Gives us a little more fodder for discussion. And let's start with your Philadelphia Flyers because they probably had the biggest news of the last couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, on the heels of Matvei Michkov coming over from Russia to start his NHL career, the Flyers announced a contract extension for Travis Konecny. He is under contract for one more year, so this would have been a contract year coming up, but it's all free and clear now. So following next season, he will be paid $8.75 million a year, or that's the cap hit. At least it's an 8-year deal worth $70 million. He's got a no move clause for the first 6 years and a limited no trade for the final 2. And it is officially, if you don't count the suitor offer sheet, it is the biggest contract in Flyers history.
And look, that wraps up Konecny for pretty much not all of his career, but certainly through his prime. I mean, he will be in his mid-30s by the time this contract is over.
Yeah, he'll be 36 when the contract expires. So he said himself at the press conference announcing the deal that he wanted to be a Flyer for life. He talked it over with his family, and they wanted to stay in the area. They were really happy. And he's a Flyer, and that's what he wanted, and the team obliged. It's really interesting because these 8-year deals are getting very plentiful right now, and they're for a lot of money, and the term, like I said, is high, but that's kind of the price of doing business right now in order to get the cap hit a little bit lower, because the chatter was it was going to be around $10 million, which is way too high to pay for him. But I think that would have been for like a 4 to 5 year deal, and in order to get it down, they had to give him the full 8.
Now, Konecny coming off a career year, what do you like most about this deal, and what's your biggest concern?
I think, I love him as a Flyer. I think when you think about the Philadelphia Flyers, he fits the identity of the team. I think that he's become a real strong leader in the locker room there. And I think that, he's maturing really nicely. I think he's still, pretty dogged out there and can play pretty physical and gets chirpy, but he's picking and choosing his battles a little bit more now, and he'll be the first to admit it. And I think that he's looking to be a role model now for some of the younger guys. And so it's changing his style, but the skill is still there. That's absolutely what I love about it. What I don't love about it is we don't know yet when the Flyers could peak in this rebuild and really be cup contenders. And is this contract going to be a hindrance in order to make that dream a reality here?
Certainly doesn't hurt that here's a player who led the NHL in shorthanded goals. So that's a little added bonus there for the Flyers. And Travis Konecny going to be part of this team for the foreseeable future. The Buffalo Sabres also busy this week, signing Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen to a new extension. What do you think this move means for the Sabres?
Yeah, it's really good because this is where they were headed, right? Where he plus Devin Levi were the two goaltenders, presumably heading into next season, and that's what management has talked about. They also have James Reimer and Felix Sandstrom, ex-Philadelphia Flyer, as backups in the wings just in case. So they do have really solid depth at goaltending right now, and they got him for 5 years at $4.75 million. I think that's really solid for your top goaltender right now. And, I think the math is a little fuzzy because of, not everybody has full rosters yet with the contract signings and roster spots. But as of now, the Sabres have 8% of their salary cap on goaltending, which is pretty median, I would say. That's about right where it should be. They have one more roster spot to fill. So I think the Sabres are in really good shape from a goaltending perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And $4.75 million for your starting goalie is a pretty nice low number.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you look at his season this past year, he played 54 games, 27 wins, 5 shutouts. That's, wins and shutouts were most in a season by a Sabres goaltender since Ryan Miller's days. And, I just really feel like if you're going to ding the Sabres on anything, goaltending is not going to be one of them.
No, maybe some of the defensemen in front of the goalies, but not the goalies.
Right. Right.
So absolutely. So good move for the Flyers. Good move for the Buffalo Sabres. One other deal wanted to talk about: my New York Islanders reaching an agreement with restricted free agent Oliver Wahlstrom, a 1-year deal for $1 million, and they avoid arbitration as a result.
Yeah, I think, obviously you want to avoid arbitration here. And Wahlstrom has been, just from an outside perspective here, just a real mystery, I think. So much promise, but hasn't quite gotten there. He's kind of been borderline and at times shown a lot of promise, but then just kind of fades away. And do you think this is like a one last prove it deal for him?
I still have the feeling he's going to get traded before the season starts. Right now, as a result of this deal, the Islanders are now $950,000 over the cap. So they can't afford to put him on their roster. He would have to clear waivers if they sent him down to the AHL to Bridgeport. They're not going to do that because they'd lose him for absolutely nothing. And they only have room right now for 22 players on their roster. So unless another player gets moved and cap space is created, I get the feeling they're still looking for a trade partner. Unfortunately for Oliver Wahlstrom, he has failed to gain the confidence of 3 head coaches right now. Barry Trotz didn't work out with him, didn't work out this past year with Lane Lambert or Patrick Waugh. It's what he does when he doesn't have the puck, I think, that has hindered him. He's not the greatest skater in the world, and he just doesn't seem to, play well without the puck positionally. It has been a problem. Now, injuries also hampered him and cost him a good part of the season. I still think he can succeed somewhere, but I think a change of scenery would probably benefit both him and the Islanders.
That is an interesting option, but is there a market for him? Is the problem?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're looking for a guy who only costs $1 million and does have goal scoring potential, you take a flyer on Oliver Wahlstrom. I'm not saying the Islanders are going to get a lot in return for him, but probably a mid-round draft pick or a solid, mid-tier prospect or AHL player, veteran, could be possibilities.
Yeah, so you don't even think it's a situation where the Islanders would have to pay somebody to take him?
No, I don't think it's that bad, but they may not get, he was a first-round pick, and they're not going to get anywhere near that in exchange for Oliver Wahlstrom. But we'll see. Still a lot of time between now and the start of the season. but the Islanders have to figure out something with regard to Oliver Wahlstrom. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. Erica L. Ayala will join us. She interviews Allie Munroe and is part of our bi-weekly Women's Hockey Spotlight. We've got that and a lot more coming up next on the Locked On NHL podcast.
It's summer, which always makes me think of baseball, and especially with my Philadelphia Phillies being a ton of fun this season, I want to be there in person as much as possible. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier, and prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, the all-important view from your seat, their low price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying those coveted MLB tickets in your town, summer concerts, and more. My favorite part of the app is that it's great for getting notified about last-minute flash deals, and they let you save even more with zone deals, where you pick a section and let Game Time choose the seat for you. Best of all, they have all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, and your tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And now we go to Erica L. Ayala with our bi-weekly Women's Hockey Spotlight.
We are continuing our women's hockey coverage here in the offseason at Locked On NHL. And so the Women's Hockey Spotlight is welcoming Allie Munroe of PWHL Toronto. Allie, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good, enjoying summer and enjoying life, just having fun right now.
Hey, that's what we love to hear. I'm sure you're probably sitting pretty too now because you just re-upped with Toronto. I got a 2-year deal. Let's talk about it. Let's first talk about the deal. You know, what made this the right fit for you at this point in your career?
I loved Toronto last season. The group and the staff was incredible. We had such a good season. I mean, it didn't end the way we wanted to, but I just see the potential in the group. So it was the easiest decision ever to sign for 2 years. Some stability is always nice, and I just love the city. I love the fans. Like I said, the easiest decision ever.
I love it. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about stability and how things have certainly changed for you in the last handful of seasons. But let's first talk about PWHL Toronto. You kind of alluded to it. Certainly didn't end the way you wanted. But let's talk about the start of the season because, you know, here at Locked On NHL, when we do our Women's Hockey Spotlight, we were kind of noticing that it was a little bit choppy at the beginning. But I remember being in Toronto for NHL All-Star Weekend and got a chance to chat with Sarah Nurse, and y'all had a game that weekend as well. And I was like, come on, Sarah, what's the skinny? What's the deal here? She's like, don't worry about it. Basically, that was in summary, she was like, don't worry about it. And I was like, all right, if Sarah says don't worry about it, I'm not worried then.
Yeah, pretty much. That's kind of how we rolled with it. I mean, the start was disappointing, but I honestly think it was Nursey that said it. She was like, but the vibes were still so high. Like, we were losing, but the vibes were still there, and we believed in each other the whole way. And we kind of made one of a turnaround game, a must-win game, and we won it. And then we didn't stop winning for a while there. So it got a little low for a little, but we didn't stop believing in each other, and we got through it.
Yeah,
Cool.
That's pretty powerful. I mean, it seemed that way. Like I said, I was like, I don't know. On paper, we were expecting something different, and it wasn't coming together out the gate. But when Nursey was just like, yeah, don't worry about it. I was like, and she said it not like she wasn't mad that I asked the question.
Yeah.
She was just like, no, we're good. Don't worry about it. I was like, okay.
Yeah, that was pretty much it, honestly. Like, yeah, if Nursey says don't worry about it, I'm not worrying about it.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, who am I? You know, I mean, the talking head that is supposed to do this stuff. But I was like, all right, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
But I mean, talk about the vibes, because I mean, Sarah Nurse is one personality. I mean, you've got Carly Jackson, Maltese, Spooner. I mean, it's just like all kinds of personalities. I feel like it would be like, you know, like a surfer house, just of like riding the wave, like good vibes, but also maybe chaotic energy at the same time. Like, what was it like in the locker room, or some folks will call it the dressing room, for PWHL Toronto?
Honestly, it was so fun. Like I had so much fun coming to the rink every day with everyone. Like we all just meshed well. Everyone respected each other so much and was such a good teammate to each other, which I think that's what brought us so much success. But um, yeah, like we just had a good time at the rink, but we also pushed each other when we needed to be pushed. And I think also Troy did that really well. He knew when to push us. He knew when to bring the best out of us. But the girls were awesome. Like we have a lot of personalities, and we all just vibe together, and it was like such a fun time.
Yeah, I love that. And so you alluded to it before, you kind of circled this is a must win for us. We know that traditionally speaking in women's hockey, it's a pretty tight season. So you get a quarter of the way through and you're only, you could be even single digits in hockey games. So let's talk about what it was like on the other side of that, because it's one thing to kind of find your groove. And sometimes, like you said, maybe that's when the team is losing. But there's also sometimes pressure when you find yourself winning and chasing a top spot like the Toronto team. So how, if at all, did the vibes for the team change, or what did you see as the way that the team was able to kind of weather any different kind of terrain that you experienced on the other side of that losing streak?
Yeah, I think when we went on our winning streak, we tried like not to focus on it a lot. We just took one series at a time, so every 4 games, because it's such a short season, but a long season at the same time. Not a lot of games. So we just kind of try to take it one game at a time, one series at a time, and I think that helped us a lot. Obviously, when we started to get up there, and every game media makes a bigger deal about it, and the fans and stuff, which is awesome. Like that's what exactly what we want. But yeah, you kind of feel maybe that little bit of pressure. So when we lost, everyone was like, we knew we were gonna lose. It's not a big deal. But I think we look back and we were like, wow, that was a special run we went on, and we were really proud of that. But while we were in it, I don't think we were focusing on it. I think we knew every game mattered for the points in the standings, because the playoff race was, I mean, insane, right down to the last game. Like that was so cool. I thought it was awesome for women's hockey.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we definitely are going to talk to you about that, because not only was it a tight race, Toronto ends up on top, but there are also these different elements, right, that we've
Yeah.
never seen in women's pro hockey before. And, some things that have been controversial within hockey overall, you didn't have to deal with some of that with the gold plan. But, I want to ask you a little bit about being able to pick your opponent, like the power of being able to do that. So let's first talk about pre-playoffs, because then we'll get to the other stuff as well. We got to talk about it. But
Yeah.
all right, so you're saying not really focused on the wins. You kind of reflect as things are being written. You're being asked about it a little bit more. But I'm very curious. To what extent, if at all, did the players kind of have a say in that? What was the conversation from among the players and with the coaching staff and front office on, like, all right, we have this power, and now what are we going to do with it?
Not much, to be honest. Like I think we all talked among like with all the players. But we didn't really have much of a say, to be honest. I don't think we were really worried about it. We were confident with whoever we played, and obviously, I mean, Minnesota is a great team, and maybe some people said that we picked wrong, but at the end of the day, like Boston, Minnesota, like it was gonna be a battle no matter what. So we were kind of like, whoever they pick, not a big deal. We're gonna be focusing on us, but I think it's a pretty cool rule. It didn't work out in our favor, obviously, but I think all the new rules are so fun and so cool, and gets the fans talking, gets everyone talking, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and we see this. I also cover the WNBA, which also Toronto, like, let's go. I'm so
Yeah,
excited. It's
me
finally
too.
official. I'm so hyped
It's
up.
gonna be so
Uh
cool.
the strong crossover energy is what I love. So I love
Same.
to see that. But so we get this chance to see Toronto, another women's hockey team in Toronto in the playoffs. When it comes to, though, before we move on to how the series went, would now that you've been in that, do you have any kind of change of approach or opinion when it comes to like having that power, or even, thinking about if you're one of the first teams eliminated and that kind of push to win even after being eliminated so that you can get that number one pick, which ultimately we saw happen with PWHL New York, although it was, like you said, such a tight race that there weren't really a lot of other teams that were eliminated at the time. But I mean, do you think that would, in your situation, do you think it would change the approach on how you kind of tackle and are a little strategic when it comes to some of that moving forward?
Maybe, but like I think it's such a tight, like every game is so tight in our league that like it's so hard to think like that. And there's not many games, so it's like you're just honestly going, it feels like playoff hockey every game. Um, which was super cool, but it like obviously we got to pick our opponent, it didn't work out in our favor, but like I said, I mean we could have played Boston, and they could have beat us or we could have beat them. Like I think the league is so tight that in hockey, so it's such a funny game that like who you pick, it's just gonna give them motivation no matter what. So I think Minnesota kind of got the underdog mentality, as they should. I would be the same way, and we just weren't able to fend them off, and it is what it is. Credit to them.
Fair enough. I think it's always interesting to ask and I mentioned the WNBA because I mean the storylines are wild and we're like, whoa, like welcome here, but also like where'd you come from with that? So I'm always curious as you know, as players, when you're introduced to different things, if and how at all it kind of impacts how you approach the game. So I appreciate you walking us through that.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop. Well, with the NBA and NHL playoffs in the rearview mirror now, it's summertime, and our focus turns to baseball and to the summer games in Paris. And FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Check out the odds for your favorite Major League Baseball team and see what their latest odds are on the game or maybe winning the division or the pennant. And always lots of opportunities to bet on the summer games in Paris. A lot of excitement there for the U.S., Canada, and countries all around the world. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel.com, FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So, Rachel, some big news out of Edmonton. They hire Stan Bowman, recently reinstated by the NHL, to be their new general manager. I know there's a lot of controversy connected to this. What are your initial thoughts on this move?
It's confounding to me because, I mean, I understand they reinstated him, but just because they reinstated him doesn't mean you have to hire him, first off. And second of all, like, is he the right fit for Edmonton? Like, even if you put all that aside, which you can't and you shouldn't, like, what are we doing here? They have some of the biggest contracts in the history of the Edmonton Oilers coming up to negotiate, and Stan Bowman is the right guy to do that? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, he did have some star contracts to deal with in Chicago when he was there.
He did, but did he do a good job of them?
Well, yeah, that's a different question. And then the I guess the follow-up question is, does he learn from those mistakes? But okay, let's go back. Obviously, you know, Bowman was suspended and banned after the 2010 sexual assault scandal in Chicago came to light. And, you know, he ends up resigning in 2021. The league places him on the banned list, and they just took him off that list earlier. Now, Bowman did say that he spoke to Kyle Beach, who was the player involved in that unfortunate and horrifying incident, and that he admitted to Beach that what happened in 2010, his response was inadequate. What do you think about him reaching out to Beach directly and talking to him, and then Beach actually being somewhat supportive of what Bowman said?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Number one, there's another player involved, John Doe, too, that we've never learned who they are, and we have not
Correct.
heard from them. So there is that factor. And we did get a pretty solid endorsement from Sheldon Kennedy. And that was kind of like let out before the official hiring was made. And that's what kind of put a sour taste in my mouth about it, because it seemed like a PR move to set the stage that, oh, we're going to hire Stan Bowman and it's going to be okay. And you have to think it's okay because Sheldon Kennedy said so. And I think that it's great that Bowman appears to be, of the three men suspended for all of this, seems to be the one who's done the most work and has made the most outward progress. But, you know, I think that we've needed more public evidence of this than one person's letter and endorsement about it. I think that, again, just because someone's unsuspended and they've made progress doesn't mean you have to hire them right away, or you should hire them right away. Maybe we need a little bit more time, because I think, you know, there's a lot of people in the community in Edmonton who have experienced assaults and maybe don't feel so great about this. And, you know, even the Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton had to put out a statement about this as well, saying, you know, our hearts go out to anyone who's been impacted by the news. You know, they put a statement of support, I would say, in there, and that, you know, he's been engaged in this process and he hopes, you know, they hope it continues. But, you know, people are still hurt by this, and ultimately they didn't have to do it. And I don't think they should have.
I mean, Bowman's, okay, two separate issues here. On the hockey side of things, his resume is outstanding. I mean, multiple Stanley Cups. You know, if you were going to list the available potential GMs, and this did not, you know, if this scandal had never come to light or never taken place, I don't think there's any doubt Stan Bowman would be a leading candidate for almost every opening. But it did take place, and you can't just forget about it. It seems like he has made a sincere effort to say and hopefully also do the right things. And I'm sure we don't know everything that has or has not been done.
Sure.
But
But why don't we?
Well, some of it may be personal, especially if he did reach out to John Doe. We don't know that. We don't know either.
We don't know. Yeah,
he may have, and he may not want to talk about that, or he may not be able to talk about that. But we don't know that, so we can't say either way. But what other things would you want to have seen from Stan Bowman before a reinstatement?
I mean, I think I would have liked to have seen something with Bowman and Sheldon Kennedy, like an event. You know, if you're saying what's the next step in the progress of owning up to your actions, have something more public that's showing this progress and saying, let's have an event to support survivors. Let's do a fundraiser. Let's do something and partner together. And, you know, as part of that, then you say, look, this is what I have done. This is part of what I am doing and will continue to do. And I don't expect anything in return. That's the thing, is that, like, it just feels like there's this unspoken exchange here in order for him to get this job back. And I don't feel like it's deserved yet. I don't think it's never deserved. I'm just not comfortable with it yet.
No, I can understand, you know, that perspective. I'm not sure where I stand on this at the present time. on the one hand, you want to be able to give a path to someone to correct their mistakes and earn forgiveness and continue on with their lives. And on the other hand, it's such a big issue and such a damaging experience that you don't want to let it go lightly. So you sort of have to find that balancing act. And it's not an easy thing for anybody, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either. And I don't say what I'm saying lightly either. I think that
I don't think you are.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think there's never a path for Stan Bowman to get a job in hockey again. I think that would be disingenuous just as much. I just think we weren't at a point like where we felt like it was okay. And I felt like that suspension was too short for all three of them. So I feel like there's just not been enough respect given to people who have experienced assault and were jarred by this news without any real groundwork being laid other than removal of the suspension by the league. That was really it.
How much longer would you feel would have been appropriate?
I don't know, because we hadn't heard anything about that.
Right.
Other than they're going to not be suspended anymore. But I can't answer that. But I would like to have had an answer for that, but I don't.
Yeah. Stan Bowman is back in the NHL. He is now the GM of the Edmonton Oilers. I'm sure this is not the last we're going to hear about this situation. And hopefully he continues to say and do the right things under the circumstances.
Yeah, and good luck with that Draisaitl contract, which you're going to have to, talk to Connor McDavid about, because they're inextricably linked, what each of them are getting paid. And I think that Connor McDavid is going to want to be paid the most, and Draisaitl just behind him. And that's a lot of money for two players. Granted, those two players, Draisaitl kind of fell off a little bit in the Stanley Cup final, but I think that those two players got them to a Stanley Cup final, and they're owed a lot. So how do you do that and still have the rest of a team?
That is the on-ice challenge that Stan Bowman and the Oilers face going forward, and we'll certainly be reporting on that as things develop in the future. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for today's show. I will be back on Monday interviewing three of our local hosts about the biggest stories from around the National Hockey League. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe, and thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.